Hello, everybody. This is the Office of Early Learning, and this is our monthly inclusion webinar. We sometimes get together with the Infant and Toddler Network as well, and so this is the case for today's webinar. I am Lisette Levy, and I have here in the room my colleague, Rebecca Amnott, and she is going to give you a few announcements. And after that, we have the pleasure of introducing you to our guest speaker. So, Rebecca?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Rebecca. Most of you are familiar with our webinar technology, but just want to let you know that we do have everyone right now on mute. However, we will be stopping periodically to check for questions. If you have questions, please type them in the question box, or you can raise your hand and we would be able to unmute you to be able to speak with us and ask questions to our presenter today. So that's how we're going to move forward, and on that we can get started.
Yeah, I just want to also let you know that the whole PowerPoint, it is on the part of handouts on your right screen, or sometimes you can move the box. So look for it in the handouts. You can download it, and it's all yours. And so with anything else, I have the pleasure to introducing our colleague, Lisa Negrini. She was very generous and wanted to come and present for you guys today. So with nothing else, Lisa, you are on.
Thank you, Lisette, and Rebecca as well, and I'm really happy to be here today. I'm Lisa Negrini, and I am from USF St. Petersburg's Family Study Center and Infant Family Center. And at the Family Study Center and the Infant Family Center, we work with families prenatally through 5 years old on an array of activities, including research, training and professional development, and direct services for families that have been exposed to intergenerational trauma and toxic stress. We also do infant and early childhood mental health consultation within our community, both in our early care and education system as well as across other disciplines, which we will be talking about today just a little bit. And so I welcome you. Thank you for tuning in today to hear a little bit about infant and early childhood mental health consultation. And I'm going to make the general assumption that this is an introductory webinar for most of you, and kind of start at the beginning and really want to make sure that we're defining what infant and early childhood mental health consultation is, because that is a mouthful, and it is also described differently and defined differently in different systems across the United States. And so today we'll talk a little bit about what is our working definition here in Florida, how is it being applied, how do we identify the qualifications of a consultant, and talking about the core components of consultation within a cultural framework. So the first thing I want to do is really thank the Georgetown model, because what we have here in Florida and what I'll be talking about today is really rooted in the work of the Georgetown University Center for Human and Child Development. And we had the opportunity through a grant funded by Launch to have Neil Horan and Amy Hunter come to Florida to do a training that was a learning collaborative for an entire year, where 50 clinicians throughout the state of Florida were trained in infant and early childhood mental health consultation. And that included 3 days of training and then a year of monthly consultation, supervisory meetings with Neil and Amy, and then 2 days of training at the end. And so in trying to help infuse our state with infant and early childhood mental health consultation, this really launched 50 clinicians throughout the state in being able to do this work on the Georgetown model. And so I want to start by kind of framing what consultation is. And so let's think about it as an approach to supporting parents and caregivers of infants and babies, young kids, to ensure that they're equipped with the knowledge and the skills that they need to promote healthy social emotional development, because we all know that social emotional development is really what's necessary and critical in helping our kids be successful in their early care and education settings, as well as in kindergarten and throughout their academic careers and life. So when you think about helping adults to recognize, identify, and address problems and interact with children in ways that promote social emotional development, that's really what we're trying to do. So when we talk about infant and early childhood mental health, what we're really talking about is healthy social emotional development. And we can also add behavioral development, relationship development. What we really want to see is for kids to be thriving in their environments because they're able to develop relationships. They're able to identify and regulate those emotions and their behaviors, develop empathy, to be able to relate well to their peers, and have that capacity to explore and learn optimally. And so to get into a little bit deeper of a definition, Cohen and Kaufman call infant and early childhood mental health consultation a problem-solving and capacity building collaborative relationship. And we're going to talk a little bit about what does that mean to be problem solving and capacity building, because there are several layers to what consultation can do. But the core is that the consultant that has mental health expertise works with one or more experts in other fields. And so early care and education providers, home visitors, child welfare workers, physical health providers, early intervention fields. And so we want to kind of assume that today we're talking about infant and early childhood mental health consultation in early care and education, but it is being broadly applied throughout in a multidisciplinary way across infant and early childhood mental health in our state. So our goals are really going to be, with this model, to be able to foster social and emotional development for kids. So we all know that those specific behaviors that impact children's ability to be able to learn in the classroom, and whether that's dysregulation or inattentiveness or other specific behaviors are become problematic for the child, for the classroom, and for the other children that participate in the program. And so in building, we want to build staff, the capacity of staff and of families to be able to help children's behavior. And so when we talk about capacity building, we're really talking about the capacity of the adult caregivers in the child's environment to provide the kind of support that they need to grow and to thrive. And so in thinking about promoting consultation, the program-wide strategies are really important, because we often think about interventions as being critical to child development on a child-per-child basis, but we're also looking at consultation at a broader spectrum. So we're thinking about the child and family, we're thinking about the classroom and the teacher, and we're also thinking about the child care center and the entire program of operations that come out of a facility that is directed. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about it being indirect. And so when I say indirect today, I'm going to talk about the fact that we're not addressing children one-on-one. So we have to differentiate between therapy and early intervention services that work primarily with the child from consultation. Consultation only works with adults. And so that's why we call it indirect. And that's why we say one of the core components is that it's indirect. Even though the child is at the core of our mission to create change, we still are working only with adults. And when we talk about capacity building, we're talking about helping to build the capacity of those caregivers, those teachers, those parents, the folks who have the responsibility for the child's daily care to be able to know how to respond more sensitively and more optimally to a specific child's behavior. And when you learn how to respond to one child's behavior, that learning then can be applied to multiple children's behavior. And so as we think about, for instance, using trauma-informed practices, we think about building capacity of the teacher to respond sensitively to a child who has been through a traumatic experience and is suffering from trauma-based behaviors, and we're helping the teacher be able to address that child, sensitively respond, meet that child's complicated needs. But we're also teaching that teacher about how to be trauma-informed in their classroom, and so consider trauma in their interactions with all of the children in the classroom. And we're also trying to facilitate the thinking around trauma-informed practices center-wide. And so we're really trying to build capacity through knowledge and skill development.
Lisa?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I think Libby Snyder has a question.
Okay.
Libby, you have been unmuted if you want to ask your question.
No, I just wanted to agree strongly with what she's been talking about. I think that we really need to, as a forefront and as a basis of what we're doing, be totally aware of the trauma informed and all of that goes along with it.
Thank you, Libby. I think that's really important, and I think that has become a central role in infant and early childhood mental health consultation, because we know that we've got many, many children and families that are suffering from the effects of intergenerational trauma and ongoing toxic stress due to parental mental illness, parental substance use, violence in the home and community, and stress within their community that creates unemployment, homelessness, hunger. We have so many toxic stressors that our families are dealing with, that our kids within the classroom are showing the signs of that stress. And if we don't, as professionals, address the signs of those stress and help support that child in being able to manage that stress, as well as have that level of intervention and support for the family, then we're not going to help prepare kids for their futures. And so I think what we're really trying to do is we're trying to break that cycle of trauma and toxic stress. And so that intergenerational cycle really requires us to be incredibly attentive to parental capacity to be able to manage their own mental health and well-being, and to support the development of their child. So thank you for saying that. And so kind of continuing on, we're thinking about a collaborative relationship. And so here at USFSP, we do a lot of training on co-parenting and family engagement. And what we know is that children who have supportive, healthy, secure attachments with their caregivers, and their caregivers are involved and on the same page with their upbringing, they do better than kids that don't have that supportive network of people. And for many years, infant mental health has been a mother-child field. And now we're really moving into infant mental health being a parent or caregiver and family systems approach to supporting infant early development. And that's really important that we're thinking about what are the relationships that support the child in their development. What caregivers can we bring in? Can we bring in mom and dad and grandma and auntie and anybody who's responsible for the care and well-being of that child, as well as the teacher, the child care director? You know, we want to bring an entire team of people together that want to help this child be successful and thrive. And so everything that the consultant does is really relationship based. And there is a strong base in co-parenting in infant and early childhood mental health consultation, because we really want to ensure that we are supporting each parent-child or caregiver-child relationship, as well as the communication that's happening between home and school. And that is just critically important for us to be able to address all of the behaviors across environments and the child's long-term outcomes and well-being. And so, again, the defining features that we're looking at in consultation are promoting social emotional development or infant mental health, addressing challenging behavior. And I think in all the trainings that I've done in early care and education, at every single training, what teachers really want to know, what they really want support in, is how do you manage these complicated behaviors that children are displaying. It is so difficult to manage an entire classroom of children, communicate and connect with their families, support the school in general, and also manage kids that have complicated behaviors where you've tried everything that you have in your toolbox to help this child and it's still not working. And so trying to help support those teachers and being able to develop the knowledge and the skill set to work with kids with complicated behaviors in a way that is sustainable and consistent across household and school is just incredibly important. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the different kinds of consultation. And when I say different kinds, I really mean layers. And so the first layer is really what we talked about, child and family-centered consultation. So that includes having an issue identified for a specific child and having a professional or a parent contact the consultant and say, you know, Johnny's behavior is really out of control and I don't know what to do about it anymore. And so having the consultant, and we'll go through the process a little bit later on, but having an identified issue with a specific child that brings the consultant into the process of trying to then work with, in a collaborative way, both the parent and the staff to develop a plan for that child. So then on the programmatic level, so we're thinking about classroom observations. So often we have one child or multiple children within a classroom who have specialized needs or complicated behaviors, or we have teachers who are fairly new to the field or fairly inexperienced with children, or don't have experience with children that have complex behaviors. And that particular teacher needs a lot of support in learning what are the best behavioral interventions and supports for children who may be exposed to trauma or have some specialized needs, and or maybe just exhibiting a particular problematic behavior that needs to be addressed that might be impacting the whole classroom. And so having a consultant that consult within the classroom with a particular teacher is incredibly helpful for our less skilled or new teachers who need to develop the ability to be able to respond to very complex social issues that we have in our communities in Florida. And so we've literally got entire classrooms full of children who go home at night and don't know, where the next meal is coming from, who's going to be there to take care of them, whether or not they need to be fearful that there's going to be some kind of violence, not sure whether or not they have a home that night or what roof they may be sleeping under. And so these incredible toxic stressors for children and families that live within communities in Florida really need specialized, supportive teachers with a lot of knowledge and skill and capacity to be able to meet these deeper needs of children and promote wellness. And so I also want to say promoting staff wellness at both the classroom and the program level. And when I say that, I think it's really important for us to consider that many of our teachers and professionals working in early care and education have had incredibly traumatic lives themselves. And so they're coming from their own place of trauma, from their own place of toxic stress. They're coming from similar communities or the same community that they serve, where we've had generations of families soaked in toxic stressors. And so the first thing that we really need to do is ensure that our staff are well and that they are identifying their needs for support and for help. And so when we do trauma training, we talk just constantly about the triggers that happen for children in the classroom and what's happening when a child's trauma is triggered and what kind of responses they're getting. But we're also talking about what happens to the staff in the classroom when the teacher's trauma is triggered and when the teacher becomes reactive to the children's behavior, to their loudness, to their aggression, to their anger. What happens when everybody in the classroom is triggered? And we've all walked into classrooms where we've thought, oh my gosh, what's going on in here? And that's because the kids are triggered, the teacher's triggered, there's no support in the classroom for a healthy regulation in a way that can stabilize the emotional atmosphere in the classroom. So we really want to be attentive to staff wellness, and part of that is reflective supervision. And we won't spend a lot of time talking about reflective supervision today because you'll have the opportunity to do that another day. But it's incredibly important that teachers have that opportunity to meet with their directors or possibly the consultant and be able to share what their needs are, what their personal traumas have been that have led them to act one way or another within the classroom that may be interfering with their capacity to provide the best kind of support for kids and their behaviors. Okay, so what infant and early childhood mental health consultation isn't? And I think it's important for us to talk about this because there are so many misconceptions and because this is a fairly new term. And I wish there was an abbreviation because I say infant and early childhood mental health consultation so much, and it really is a mouthful, but I'm sure we can think of something else to call it. And many states actually in the U.S. have thought of other names. And so we've got all kinds of healthies and all kinds of different verbiage for ways that we help support children and families. And so maybe that's down the line. But let me tell you what it isn't. It isn't diagnostic evaluation, so it's not assessment. It's not, so if a child is identified as having a specific social, emotional, behavioral, relationship, learning, or physical problem that has been identified that needs assessment, that would call for specialized services. And so whether that means a speech and language professional or developmental pediatrician or mental health counselor or whatever it may be, the consultant can recommend an assessment occur based on what they're observing, but they don't actually do the evaluation. It also isn't therapeutic play groups or group therapy. It's not individual therapy. So a consultant should not be taking a child individually and doing work with that child individually. That's therapy. It's not family therapy. It's not staff therapy. It really is consultation, working with the adults. Now, that's not to say that some infant and early childhood mental health consultants actually do therapy too, and so that would be a dual role. So perhaps a consultant has 5 or 3 child care centers that they do consultation in. They may also do therapy in another role for another agency or in private practice. So it really is about having the role of consultant be in a particular center, just be the consultant, not the therapist, so that their roles are not confused. And that is confusing for some folks because they say, well, here's a therapist in private practice and they're doing the consultation. Can't they do the therapy too? Preferably no, because what we really want to do is we want them to stay in the role of consultant. And so just to give you an idea of what are the qualifications of a consultant. So and not just anybody can kind of walk in and say they're an infant and early childhood mental health consultant. They need to have training. They need to be at least master's degree. And what Georgetown says is actually that they need to be either licensed or licensed eligible in their field. And so licensed clinical social worker, licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family counselor, licensed psychologist. And they have to have experience with adults and children, because the work of the consultant is really with the adults. It's really with the caregivers and not with the children. But they need to know work with children. They need to know child development. They need to know early care and education. They really need to have a good understanding of typical and atypical child development and all of the pieces that go along with that, as well as a cultural understanding of the community that they work in and the families that they work with and for, and really be able to take that broader systems look. And so it's actually a very detailed and broad skill set that we're asking the consultants to have. And of course, if you have a consultant for something, you want them to know something. And so we want to make sure that consultants are actually coming in and having the skill sets that are necessary to be able to meet the needs of the families and the staff in the center. And so these are just some additional skills and experience that are important for consultants. And the reason I'm going over this is because I think it's really important for centers to be able to differentiate if they're interested in bringing in a consultant and they want to be able to create some kind of partnership with a mental health professional as a consultant, that they know what is the skill set, what are the degree requirements, what are the training that we want a consultant to have, so that the experience is positive and the outcomes are what the center hopes for. So I'm going to show you this little video. It's just a couple minutes long, but it's a great video out of Georgetown, and I think it'll give you a really nice frame for what we're talking about today.
Did that hurt? No!
So sometimes it comes out in behaviors like hitting and biting, and it's a way for her to begin to set limits.
Wayne's advice to the Head Start team was to help Mason express his feelings in words.
It as a competition for like Amy's.
Especially teaching him to say the word no instead of biting when he gets frustrated.
I think it helped all of us because he told us what he was seeing and we, oh yeah, you're right. They do invade his space and we don't see that when we're in there. There we go.
Wayne also suggested teachers find calming activities for Mason, like drawing, and giving him a baby doll to learn to care for others.
His biting has decreased tremendously, and he's much more verbal now. He will talk to your baby, and sometimes he'll ask you to take care of his baby if he has something to do. He'll have you hold his baby.
Mommy has a baby in her stomach.
Dana is 7 months pregnant, and the Head Start team is working to prepare both Dana and Mason for the new baby.
One of the ways that we are assisting Dana is helping her prepare her son for this new baby, and also helping Mason at this time deal with some of his frustrations.
He's going to have to share mom's attention and separate more from her. And what we're going to do is try and help that transition happen in a way that is less painful for both of them.
2 bananas. Yes.
For Dana, Head Start's help has been crucial.
Head Start has given me a lot of opportunities to help Mason with his biting, and also it has given me more confidence with the fact that it's helped me be a better mom, because before, actually, I would get frustrated with Mason because I didn't know what to do to help him with his biting.
Is the water warm?
And they've also given me pamphlets to help me, ensure me that it will be okay when the baby does come, that Mason will eventually adjust. It's just going to take some time.
Okay, so I wanted to show you that because it gives you a little glimpse of what we're looking at in terms of how consultation can be used for a variety of purposes. And so thinking about the consultative stance, one of the things that we frequently talk about, and we talk about this with teachers a lot, because we have to respect the parent as the expert of on their own child. And so oftentimes we have teachers and childcare staff who have problem behaviors in the classroom with children, and the parent isn't drawn in a problem-solving way. And so oftentimes what happens is the behaviors become a report out. Well, today, Johnny did this, or he did that, or he did the other thing, and he didn't get a green, he got a red. And so it's more about, like, here are the things that your child is doing wrong, rather than let's sit down at the table together, talk about the behaviors we're seeing in the classroom, talk about the behaviors that you're seeing at home, and see if we can come up with some plan to be able to address those behaviors in a way that supports Johnny and in both the home and the school environment. And part of that is respecting the parents' expertise on their own child. They know their child best. And I think oftentimes we, in the child care setting, lose that perspective, and we don't respect how much the parent knows and how helpful they could actually be in the process of trying to help curtail that behavior. The other thing is that in thinking about bringing the family to the table, having the child care provider and the family and the consultant sit down together, it's really about sharing some of the frustration, some of the confusion, some of the negative feelings around the child's behavior, which is very negative. And so trying to come up with a way to support each other in the process of creating some change to address those complicated behaviors. And so thinking about what we know about the outcomes. And so we know that infant and early childhood mental health consultation actually reduces children's problem behaviors, but it also prevents preschool suspensions and expulsions, which we know we have a real problem with. It improves the dyadic relationship between parent and child, between caregiver and child, and teacher and child, and it reduces the number of missed days of work that the parent has. And so those are all positive outcomes for the family and for the child. On a provider level, it helps teachers manage their feelings and manage the feelings of the children in their classroom and children's behaviors. It improves the quality of teacher-child interactions because those interactions are supported. And it improves class scores. And we know that we really want to be paying attention to what is the quality of the interaction between the teacher and the child in the classroom, because that's the core of what we know quality care to be. And so these are important evidence-based outcomes. And so looking at the program level, and so program/center level, we know that we can increase the supportive policies and the ways that we address behaviors and increase reflective supervision. And so just kind of thinking about supportive policies, well, what does that mean? Maybe that means in a center, we want to create a policy that says that parents whose child are either suspended or expelled because of negative behaviors, that before that happens, that the parent actually needs to attend an in-person meeting with the teacher and with the consultant or teacher and director to discuss what the behaviors are, to problem solve and put a strategic plan in place to be able to work together to address the problem behavior. And if that happened prior to the child being expelled, that would provide a different level of support to families. And so in thinking about what are the policies that we can put into action that will actually change the way of work for a center in favor of the child and the family, that would be a great supportive policy. And so the consultant can actually come into the program and make those kind of suggestions. And maybe that also includes at the beginning of every year when the teachers, when the parents sign their agreements or their contracts with the center, that they agree to come in person for consultation as problems arise, that they agree to work with additional professionals to support their child's development. So whether that's the consultant or a referral for screening or assessment for early intervention or mental health or physical issues, those are the kinds of supportive policies that we think can help families and centers work better together. And so we know consultation also reduces staff stress and burnout, which is huge because we have a huge problem with turnover in early care and education. And we are bringing in and training new staff as quickly as we are losing staff. And so I don't actually know the statistics for the entire state of Florida, but I know here in Pinellas County, we have a shortage of trained and experienced early childhood professionals to provide the kind of quality care that we need in our community. And so if we could put in place some mechanisms and some methods to support staff in different ways, in deeper ways, in ways that will help retain them, I think it would make an amazing difference in having teachers who are skilled and experienced stay in the profession and be able to manage their own stress and feel good about the work that they're doing. And in terms of child outcomes at the program level, we have seen that it improves attachment and resilience in children, as well as improved school readiness rates. And so in a period of time where we're talking throughout the state about children's school readiness and about centers all over the state's capacity to be able to help prepare children for school, one of the things that we know works in helping improve school readiness rates is infant and early childhood mental health consultation. So that makes this intervention incredibly relevant to where we are as a state and where we want to go to optimally support children and families.
Lisa, there is another question.
Oh, okay, sure.
We actually have a few. The first one from Nancy is, how can individuals with less than a master's degree provide support and build capacity through consultation? And are there things they should or should not do?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think that what Georgetown would say is that if you don't have a master's degree, you can't do consultation. That it really does take the skills, knowledge, and experience of a master's level professional to be able to provide the level of support that families and early care and education centers need. And so in order to be fully responsive to the infant and early childhood mental health needs, that you would have to be a master's level and preferably licensed or license eligible professional to be able to do the work. Now, that's not always going to be available, right? And so I hear that a lot because we trained 50 clinicians in the state of Florida, and that is really not enough. And so I think I know that there is a problem with us building capacity to be able to provide consultation. And so what I would say to Nancy is work with a licensed person that can help provide reflective supervision to you, can help support you, can help you problem solve, can help. So if you have an outside licensed person who can provide that additional layer of clinical support, I think that then a bachelor's level person would be able to do some really positive things within centers. So that's probably the only answer that I have, but I think that that's a great question and probably something that as a state we need to explore through the process of building our capacity to have enough consultants to meet the needs that we have.
Okay, thank you for that response. And we actually have another question from Nancy. Can you explain how reflective supervision compares to coaching?
Sure. And so reflective supervision is really about understanding as a practitioner your own feelings. So as I say, practitioner or teacher or professional working with young children and families. It's about being reflective. And so it's a mirror to yourself. It's about understanding who you are as a person, how you feel, how you bring your personality, your history, both positive history and negative history, into the work with you. It's about understanding how you respond based on your feelings and what those feelings are that impact your interactions with others. And so reflective supervision is a deep process of looking within to try to facilitate an understanding of why we are the way we are, why we act the way we act, like how does our early experience impact our ability to be able to relate to others, interact with others, support others. And so coaching is more about helping other people understand their own behavior and shape their own behavior, where reflective practice is really about having someone to help us look inside. And so it's about helping that teacher who has experienced many traumas in her lifetime understand that when children get aggressive and she immediately becomes very dysregulated and has heightened anger and starts to use a voice that is much too loud for the classroom, that the reason why she all of a sudden gets so upset is because she grew up in a family where there was violence every time somebody got upset. And so her way of reacting and interacting is come from a past history that she has to be able to identify and connect the dots to and have a deeper level of understanding about how to identify her triggers and regulate her own behavior before she can help regulate the behavior of others. Is that helpful? I hope so. I think we need an entire hour to talk about reflective supervision.
Absolutely. We will be very happy to have you again for that one.
Sure.
Okay, there is another. Yes.
We actually have two questions that are very similar, so I'm going to combine them. It's from Janie and from Libby. And they're asking about the cost of consultation and who does that cost fall onto? Would it be the family, the provider? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so probably as a state and as a nation, this is one of the most complicated features of consultation. In several states, the Medicaid and Medicare and insurances they're now paying for consultation. In the state of Florida, that is not happening yet. Consultation is usually funded through a variety of ways, and so it's not usually private pay for parents. It usually falls on the center. So foundation funding, grant funding, state legislative funding, Department of Children and Families funding, Project Launch has paid for consultation in some states. They did in our state for a while, and their grant has concluded. But the payment piece is really about our system being able to figure out where should the dollars come from. So most centers cannot afford to pay a consultant out of their pocket. And so does that consultant have a way to bill for insurance, to bill for Medicaid? In most cases in Florida, no. Some insurances will now pay for consultation if it's included under like a family therapy code, but and with Medicaid that's not possible because to be reimbursed for Medicaid for intervention for children, you have to have direct contact with the child, and because the consultative stance is really to have interaction only with the adults, the payment structure is really very different. And so I wish that I had a better solution to how we're funding it. We are working with ACA and Medicaid to see what we can do to have it paid. We are talking with managed care entities and with DCF and with early learning to try to see where can we develop the money statewide to be able to support the infusion of consultation in centers, especially in our higher risk, higher needs communities. And so that's a really, really good question, and I don't have a good answer for it. I know that wasn't helpful, but that's all I've got.
Well, and I think, it's something we're all trying to figure out. There's questions coming about how did the coalitions get funding for this, and like you said, it's something that as a system we have to figure out what we can do to make this work in our state. So it's still something that's being worked on.
Yeah, we are currently writing the Preschool Development Fund grant, and we are cognizant of this issue, and we are trying to weave it in. But I wouldn't know specifically as of today how would this work out. The good news is that we are conscious of it, and we are very adamant about turning our system into a trauma-informed care system, So we're moving into the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lisette, but I think that with performance funding dollars, the early learning coalitions are allowed to dedicate dollars to infant and early childhood mental health consultation, but it's not required. And of course, if they dedicate dollars there, they're taking dollars away from things that are already funded. But that's what I believe actually happened last year, which was really good news. So they said, okay, great. If you have extra money, you can spend it on consultation. Of course, nobody has extra money. But I think that was a really good step in acknowledging that we can make a huge difference with infusing this into our offices of our early learning coalitions and our centers at the community level.
Yes. Lisa, a few of the participants are asking if you could come back and do a reflective supervision webinar for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that.
We'll coordinate it offline.
Okay. Okay, sure.
That's all the questions that we have for now, right, Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can continue.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Okay, so I'll move kind of quickly because I have quite a few slides, but you guys do have the material. You do have my PowerPoint, and I did give you the links to the Georgetown Center for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation, and there are so many resources on those websites, and they're really great resources, and there's webinars and podcasts, and you can really learn a lot. So definitely use this as kind of a jumping off of your learning for how this can be infused and what it can do to help support you and your centers and your work. We know at the systems level that consultation makes a big difference in increasing developmental screening and referral and follow-up. It helps for the early identification for mental health issues and problematic behaviors, and provides more appropriate referrals for specialty services. And we know that that's really important if we're to move kids through that early care system, making sure that all of their needs are met so that they're really ready for kindergarten. And so it's important for us to be thinking about having a solid program infrastructure at the statewide as well as the countywide as well as the center-wide, having strong supportive systems in place to be able to provide care. And that's what the Office of Early Learning does exceptionally well. And so thinking about supporting that program infrastructure to infuse consultation is really going to be fundamentally important for us making strides in Florida towards a new way of work. And so infant and early childhood mental health consultation is most effective when it's strength-based, relationship-based, preventative, culturally sensitive, individualized, promoting staff and family wellness, being child and family focused, and developing strong community partnerships. And so these are all the things that we always want to be in early care and education, and having a consultant who supports the good work that centers are already doing is just incredibly effective in creating the kind of change that we want to see. Okay, and so thinking about high quality, these are some of the components of high quality, and I'm going to kind of click through the next couple of slides because we don't really have time to cover them. But I do want to show you a really quick link for us to have a really short conversation on.
Look, I bring you a ladder. Wow! I know. It's you're okay. It's not. No, I need more. No, this! No! It's
Okay, so that's something that many child care centers see every day, and if this behavior becomes something that's occurring frequently, we've got lots of risks here, right? Because we've got kids that are being hurt and injured, and we've got to first create a safe environment for kids. And so this is the kind of little guy whose parents are going to get called and say, this isn't a good place for him anymore because he's hurting other children. And so thinking about how do we then call in a consultant to work with the family, work with the teacher, think about what Tim needs, think about what we're seeing and observing, what the child's feelings are, what he's experiencing, thinking about how we feel. Because when I saw that video, I was like, yikes, right? I mean, we don't ever want to see a little girl's hair getting ripped out in our classroom. And so thinking about what's triggering us, how do we manage the child who's been harmed, and wondering and thinking together and making a plan for what is an effective intervention going to be. And so, I really wanted to show that because I think that it's really important that we are grounded in the feelings connected to what's happening in our classroom. And that scene is very common. And so here we have, and I'm sure everywhere in the state, we have so many kids who can't regulate their feelings enough during the course of the day to be able to keep from harming themselves, harming the other students, or harming the teacher. And because of that, I think immediate action is really called for. So,
Lisa?
Yeah.
Sorry, we just have another question.
Yeah, sure.
Rebecca's going to read it.
Okay. Do you think that program outcome ratings is one cause for expulsion, or for child care programs not providing inclusive care for children with toxic stress?
So ask that question again, because I'm not really sure what they're asking. Are they asking if would be a policy change?
I think they're asking is, when they're looking at their program outcome ratings, whether it may be a VPK readiness rate or a class score, something like that, is the program using that as cause for expulsion or not providing care for children who've experienced trauma or experienced toxic stress?
Well, I'm just going to say that if we expelled everybody that had trauma and toxic stress, we would have entire centers empty. And so in thinking about the way that trauma and toxic stress profoundly impacts children's brain development, their physiology, their capacity to self-regulate and function in a healthy way in the classroom, it's tremendous, right? But we also know that we have classrooms full of kids that have experienced trauma and toxic stress. And so do I think that the outcomes in those classrooms and those school readiness rates are going to be lower because of that? Yes. School readiness rates are going to be lower because kids have been exposed to trauma and toxic stress. Absolutely, because we know how profoundly that toxic stress is impacting their ability to function and their ability to learn. And so I don't think that we can use that as grounds for expulsion, but I do think that we can use it as a way to explain why in some areas in our state we have lower school readiness rates than in other areas. And so if you compare a classroom that has 75% of or 80% of the children living below the poverty line in high-stressed families where there's been intergenerational trauma and toxic stress present, those children's capacity to be able to learn and perform academically is reduced because of the trauma and toxic stress. And those scores are going to be much lower than centers who are in higher socioeconomic environments in our state where the percentage of children exposed to trauma and toxic stress is much lower. And so in that way, I think that it needs to be a consideration for how we assess school readiness and what our response to low school readiness rates is.
Okay, so we have gotten to our limit of time.
Yes, we have. Thank you for listening. And, I think I just strongly encourage everyone to just go ahead and go through the whole PowerPoint, as well as go onto the website links that I put in the PowerPoint for more information. So thank you for the great questions today. I hope that I was able to answer some of those questions. And certainly if there are more questions, Lisette, you could reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer via email anything that feels like a question that's been coming up that you could help inform your professional staff with.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much about coming to speak to us. And I just want to remind everybody that next month we will have Zachary Gibson, and it's going to be another very interesting webinar. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you in a month.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisette.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.